Hello, as you all probably know, my name is Tremaine Brooks, and today I'll be doing my presentation over the article called Using Stories to Teach Safety by Mitch Ricketts. So, per usual, I'm going to start the presentation off by giving some background info on the author. Once again, his name is Mitch Ricketts. He is currently an assistant professor of safety management at Northeastern State University in Oklahoma. Mitch received his bachelor's degree in education, his master's in occupational safety management, and then his PhD in cognitive and human factors psychology. Mitch is a member of the American Society of Safety Engineers, and he also serves as a faculty advisor for his chapter. So, jumping into the challenges that adults face when it comes to job training and adult education. Um, as we all probably know, like a lot of training sessions can be long and uh, just super loaded with information. And so for adults, I personally think that it's difficult for adults to sit through these types of sessions because we just have a lot going on, outside of work, and it's just a lot on our minds to deal with, and then to also think about taking in all of this information, it just kind of makes it a hard feat to accomplish. And so I kind of talked about this in my last in the last assignment, just as far as like the daily distractions of life that many adults or most adults have, which is like having full time jobs and just other career obligations, family life, social life, finances, and then in addition to that, education. A lot of us, as we see, are still in school and just trying to master that multitasking skill. And then the other challenge that I wanted to know is that some or most adults are just like not really welcome to trying new things. Like some new concepts just aren't as easy for adults to grasp as it is for the younger generation to grasp because our minds are already molded into what we know and what kind of routines that we use. So it's just a little more difficult and more challenging, in my opinion, for adults to take in these new concepts. So for the article basically wants to use the art of storytelling to reinforce the training sessions that people or that adults go through. So um, he wants these stories to be literally like a story. If I come into class or whatever, I have a story that relates to the topic that we're talking about. That's the type of stories that he wants, or that he's trying to get employers to use in their training sessions. So the stories will consist of like incidents or any kind of close call accident that may happen while on the job. Um, the stories will definitely focus just on the focus on the safety and health aspects of the job. So really trying to get it to tie into what the trainings are talking about. So the trainings and the stories will go hand in hand, and the stories will like basically reinforce what the trainings are talking about. So for one reason why Mitch wants us to use the story aspect in the training sessions is because that stories typically resonate with people more. Um, the stories from hearing stories from other people who have been in the job longer and who are more experienced help these incidents and potential accidents seem more realistic and more possible to happen. The stories make the job itself more personable and more relatable, coming from an older employee to a new employee. And again, like stories add a certain kind of flair to any kind of instructional uh any kind of instructional thing. So like it allows the the instructor to grab the attention of the new employees more effectively. So Mitch talks about where would we like get the stories to use in the trainings. So he just brings up a few like locations to where as to where we could find these stories. So for one, it's like respectable published injury reports. So you can get like exactly what happened at this job, like what did they do, what types of factors played into it, and that type of thing. And then he also says using medical and scientific journals. And then he goes on to say workers' compensation case reports, which I think, since we've been talking so much about workers' compensation in other classes, it definitely gives us, hearing those types of stories would definitely make it more relatable and easy to understand. It breaks the job down. It's like, oh, okay, that person did that in this job, so that was the mistake that that person made. So it's probably best that I would avoid that, so I don't follow those same steps. And then the one of the last locations that Mitch talks about is the use of news outlets. So a lot of news stories cover incidents that may happen on the job. So those are like relatively professional um, reports on these type of things. So like and more widely recognized. So I feel like using news outlets is also a good option as far as where to retrieve the stories from. And then finally, and most importantly, the stories that are being told in these training sessions must have substance. They can't just be, oh, a story that doesn't really have a meaning, or it may have a meaning, but like that person isn't really able to convey that meaning. It's too broad. It's too just not effective. And so he talks about these points in the article as far as what makes a story have substance. So for one, in order for a story to be effective, it needs structure. So you need to come in there with the point to make. So you start off and what happens in the beginning. However the daily routine was, and then you know that the storyteller touches on their mistake, and what happens after that, and what types of repercussions were initiated after that. Another point about the stories having substance is to emphasize on key points within the story. So it's like given a lecture in class. Our professors always usually have key points that they want to deliver to us, but they add that kind of filler information to it. But the key points is really what they're trying to deliver to us. And then the other um, factor that he wants to talk about is having cause and effect relationships within that story. So have what you did, and what that action resulted in. What consequence followed that action, whether it was a good consequence, whether it was a bad one. He also says that familiarity needs to be used in the stories. Having this just makes the story more relatable to the audience. It makes it more realistic. It brings it down to earth and whatnot. And then he talks about emphasizing on preventative techniques within the story. So like I said, you want to have your story, but you want to have that story have a point to it. Like you don't want to just be talking just because. You want to have a point that you're trying to make within the story. So you talk about an incident that you had on the job. You want to talk about what could you have done to prevent that, or you talk about next time what you can do to prevent that in the future. And then one of the last ones that he talks about, and which I think is very important as well, is the use of images. Using pictures and stuff just really allows those being instructed to relate those stuff. And like some people, I'm a visual learner, so it's like when I see pictures, it's like, oh, okay, that's how I apply what they just talked about to this. It makes applications a lot easier when you use pictures. And basically, that's my presentation. And if there are any questions, please hit me up and let me know, and I'll try to get back to you. Thank you.